All right, we are now live on World Beyond War's YouTube channel, and welcome everyone has come in from the waiting room. Mabel, you can get us started. Mabel, you need to unmute.
We're doing that. Grannies for Peace welcomes you to a Mother's Day celebration, an appeal to all women to unite for peace. In 1870, Julia Ward Howe issued the Mother's Day Proclamation, urging all women to unite in opposition to war. Our program is going to begin with a short video of diverse women reading this actual proclamation from 1870.
Mother's Day really was, in its origin, an anti-war day, an anti-war statement. Julia Ward Howe was sickened by what had happened during the Civil War, the loss of life, the carnage, and she created Mother's Day as a call for women all over the world to come together and create ways of protesting war, of making a kind of alternate government that could finally do away with war as an acceptable way of solving conflict.
Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be of water or of tears.
Say firmly, we will not have questions answered by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands will not come to us reeking of carnage for caresses and applause.
Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience.
We, the women of one country, are too tender to those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm.
Disarm.
Disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice.
Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate position. As men have
often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council.
Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other
as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace.
Each bearing after his own time the sacred impress,
not of Caesar, but of God.
In the name of womanhood and
humanity, I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality
may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient,
and at the earliest period consistent with its objects,
to promote the alliance of the different nationalities,
the amicable settlement of international questions,
the great and general interest of peace.
Individual grannies, am I being heard?
Yep.
Okay. Individual grannies will now bring that proclamation alive from 1870 to now, 2021. Individual grannies are going to present statements on the nuclear dilemma, on Iran, on Yemen, on climate survival, police violence, and granny love. We will conclude this part of the program with a call for all women to come together, united by the love of our families and concern for children everywhere, to end war and violence. There will be an opportunity for the audience to make comments or raise additional issues, give us your ideas. we welcome your participation at the end of the program. And we're very fortunate to have Greta Zara with us today. She's the organizing director of World Beyond War, and she will assist us with the technical aspects of audience participation. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Greta. Greta?
Great. Thank you so much, Mabel. I'm so glad to be with you all today, and what a powerful opening video. Yes, at the end of the webinar, there will be time for questions and discussion. You can use the chat box at any time throughout the webinar to put your questions and comments, and we can read those off. Or if you want to get on video and ask your question orally, you can use the Zoom raise hand feature. At the bottom of your screen, you should see something that says reactions. Just click on the reactions, and then you can click the raise hand, and we'll call on you that way. And if you're calling in from your telephone, you can press *9 to raise your virtual hand. And we'll repeat all of this again when we get to Q&A. Thanks.
The enduring nuclear dilemma. From the heart of our planet, our beautiful blue-green island spinning vulnerably in the vast sea of the universe, a cry resounds. Spare us the sword which since 1945 has threatened us all with existential species and planetary annihilation. This sword, the nuclear threat, born of human hubris and the madness of war, has not diminished during these 75 plus years, has in fact been compounded. Instead of investment and modernization of these nuclear weapons of beyond imagining destruction, instead of refined and tweaked homicidal policies couched in mind-numbing nomenclature and formula, we, as women, grannies for peace, mothers, daughters, sisters, all must bring the totality that we have of heart-driven strength and love-woven vision to move back the hands of the doomsday clock, which today ticks at 100 seconds to midnight. We must bring heart and mind to the cause of a world freed from the threat of nuclear Armageddon.
Iran. We grannies are fervent believers in the potential of diplomacy to prevent military conflict. We rejoiced when Obama wisely negotiated the Iran nuclear deal, benefiting both Iran and the US, as all good diplomacy needs to do. This agreement worked very well, with Iran in full compliance, until Trump pulled the US out and imposed harsh sanctions on Iran. We call on the Biden administration to admit that it was wrong to withdraw and wrong to impose additional sanctions. We urge the Biden administration to rejoin and remove the undeserved punishing sanctions and to stop requiring Iran to make changes first. A Mother's Day message: admit when you have done wrong, let people and other nations count on your word.
Yemen. In 1870, when our foremothers responded to the US Civil War and its carnage, they could never have imagined what has been happening in Yemen for the past 6 years. Fueled by our government's support of the Saudi and United Arab Emirates' vicious use of siege and starvation as indiscriminate weapons of war. Here at home, in spite of growing bipartisan, bicameral congressional support to end this blockade and end our weapons sales, we have continued to sell massive weapons of destruction while supporting the bombing and cruel blockade of Yemen's ports, airports, and land entries with our logistical help and our killer drones. What was once a civil war has become the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today. 80% of people are suffering from malnutrition, and 1 in 4 children is dying of starvation or preventable and treatable diseases. Yemeni mothers, grandmothers, and other caregivers suffer the cruelest fate when they find themselves unable to protect their children or guarantee their health, their growth, or even their lives. Every day, the war and blockade against the people of Yemen continues. There is more death, more displacement, starvation, unnecessary illness, and terrible suffering. We, as the women of our nation, need to act as allies by helping Congress to end weapons sales and end direct and indirect participation in this war, and provide humanitarian aid while calling for a ceasefire.
We Grannies for Peace have an understanding between the way we treat the earth and the way we treat each other. Climate survival is imperative to our planet's survival and our human survival. We must support the Environmental Protection Agency. We must end fossil fuel production, end the wars that pollute and destroy our environments, displace families, and create refugees. We must funnel money out of the military and use it in research for making our planet green, for clean energy, and human security. We Grannies realize all that needs to be done will not happen in our lifetime, but it will happen for our grandchildren and grandchildren of the world if we persist in our efforts for climate survival.
Police violence. As mothers, grandmothers, and women who care about peace, we call for an end to police violence. Nationwide, police forces have become increasingly militaristic, increasingly authoritarian in philosophy, and dependent upon the use of force. Very often, an extreme use of force with very tragic results. Reform measures tend to just tinker around the edges and not deal with the core issues that need to be addressed. There must be a restructuring of the police function in our society. Police should work in cooperation and in partnership with all communities. The disparate treatment of people in different communities must end. And bottom line, we must deal with racism. We demand an end to police violence. Daddy's muted.
Arise again, my sisters, as you did 150 years ago, when Julia Ward Howe spoke out on behalf of us, proclaiming that the first Mother's Day, it was a soul-wrenching public plea against war by the mothers of the injured and dead in the Civil War. We, humanity's life bearers, the mothers, lovers, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, wives, and daughters, bear uniquely the heartbreaking and lifelong effects of war, the inhuman burden of family and personal loss, care and labor, both physical and mental, is borne by us. For the sake of families everywhere, war and its barbaric futility and folly must be replaced by negotiation, compromise, discernment, and love. So say we, the 21st century women of the world.
As Grannies for Peace, we call for all women to oppose war and violence by coming together. Coming together motivated by the love of our children, by the love of our families, and by our deep concern for the welfare of children everywhere. Such unity would help overcome the tensions that exist currently in our society, the polarization, even hatred between groups. All of this divides people one from another. Together, we can eliminate the destructive divisions in our culture. So we call on grannies and women everywhere to unite, and we can make a better world. We are now going to turn to Marvin Gaye, a recording of Marvin Gaye singing his famous song, Save the Children, accompanied by a photo essay showing us beautiful faces of children.